Other things, too, that need to be called out are this bizarre way that schools are really, you want to talk about another thing the left is very good at? It is separating children from their parents, breaking that parental bond, because, of course, every family is a locus for counter-revolution. Well, in Minnesota, a survey was given to school students, and if you look at it, it's basically asking kids about all their pronouns and all sorts of things like this, pushing the gender-questioning ideology on them and saying, hey, but you know what, we're not going to tell your parents, we're going to keep this a secret from you. James McPherson, we're seeing more and more cases, really disturbing cases, where young people have been brought into a whole gender transitioning process, often medicalized, without their parents' knowledge or consent. This really disturbs me.
It's an incredibly disturbing story. I mean, they're asking children, what's your legal name? What would you prefer us to call you? What would you prefer the pronouns that we use for you? And then they ask sinisterly, what would you like us to call you when we're talking to your parents? So they're sending the message, look, the classroom is a secret space out of the sight of your parents, unmonitored by your parents, and it's a secret world that we are curating apart from them. It's a very dangerous ploy, and basically it says the government can do a better job of raising your children than you can. In fact, you're safer with the state than you are with your parents. That's a dangerous message generally, but specifically for children, to teach children that, your parents don't have your best interests at heart. Trust the state. That's quite sinister.
And Liz, we hear a lot of heartbreaking stories about young people who now say that they feel like they were pressured by the system to go along with this, with gender questioning or gender transitioning processes, when in fact we know that many of them would have just left to their own devices growing up to just simply be gay. And what do you think, though, about this whole idea that we tell the parents, or we tell the kids, don't tell your parents? I know when I was growing up, this was a real, as they say, a red flag.
Yeah, 100%. That's when you knew you had to tell your parents. But for anyone watching who's alarmed about this is exactly what's going on in Victorian schools. You can read it on the Victorian Education website that, you can transition at school, not only without the consent of your parents, but without even the knowledge of your parents. It was just a few months ago that we were busting a few schools in Victoria who had sent very similar emails around saying, let us know if you want any more help in this area. We're here for you. Really creating in the psyche of the child. Your parents are the baddies. They don't understand. We're the goodies.
And this is what every totalitarian regime, though, in society does. It 100%. Tries to break down the bonds between children and their parents. In Mao's Cultural Revolution, they celebrated kids who informed on their parents. In Stalin's Russia, they celebrated kids who informed on their parents. This idea of breaking down that sacred bond, that is inherent to Marxist leftism, and that is what I'm afraid we are seeing in all of this. One more quick story, though. I'm glad you mentioned Victoria, because down in Victoria, because where else but Victoria? Where else but Victoria? There is now a controversy where, and I wouldn't have thought this is controversial at all, but a group of lesbians want to have a party, an event for fellow lesbians, and apparently this is now controversial because they don't want biological males in their space.
Fair enough.
Fair enough, James McPherson?
Well, you would think by definition being a lesbian excludes biological males, but of course you can't discriminate against someone on the basis of their gender identity or sex, and they want to hold this event in the Victorian Pride Centre, which is for LGBTQ people. So the argument is you can't exclude the G's, the B's, the T's and just run an L-only event. So it's very difficult to be a lesbian these days, James.
Isn't it interesting, though, guys, the way women always wind up bearing the brunt of whatever the left's latest project is? Now,